Good morning. Happy time zone.
Hey, morning.
How's it going, Mark?
Going pretty good. I can't complain too much.
Oh, really? So, for everyone watching either here or on a VOD, we have a special guest, Mr. Mark Simos. Simos. Which way should I
Simos.
go?
Yep.
Simos. If it was double M, it would be Simos, right? So our cybersecurity extraordinaire in Microsoft. Internally in Microsoft, Mark has a little bit of a fan club. So we're really happy to have him here. Mark, a couple of words about yourself, if you
Sure.
may.
So I've been at Microsoft about 21 years, give or take. Everything from support, what's your problem with Active Directory? How can I fix your stuff today? Was kind of where I started out. To consulting, support engineering, and a whole lot of different things along the way.
Yeah.
Um, Infrastructure and security, but I pretty much go by lead cybersecurity architect. So focus on a couple of our business areas like IoT and OT and network security, intensely right now. But a lot of work around sort of bringing it all together, reference programs, reference architectures. How does this actually look when you're trying to adopt and modernize your security?
So you're telling us you've been around for a while.
Yeah, when I started, I had a lot more hair and it wasn't as gray.
Dude, last year my hairline receded like an inch.
It doesn't go the other way. It just
I
keeps.
know, I know. So it's an interesting topic. I put it a little bit cheeky in the title because throughout the COVID shit show, there is no other way of putting it. We've been hearing zero trust, zero trust, zero trust, and I'm literally having PTSD flashbacks from back in 2008. Everything was virtualization. Even freaking remote desktop was virtualization.
Oh,
Then
do you remember the .NET thing? Were you around that long?
oh
Every
no, no,
product
my
had to
first
have
Windows was
.NET.
Vista. So
Oh, okay. I remember like when we had a little bit of betting pool in the team I was on because someone was like, "I bet you when they name the new server, it's going to have a .NET in it," because that
yep,
was like the thing
it was
around
2003
2002,
server. Yes, I
2003.
read up on it. I read Mark's
And
book
they
and
did it, and then they pulled it off because they realized how dumb it was.
yeah. Yeah, I would talk to Wesley Miller about it because it's a pretty interesting topic on Longhorn and stuff. So back in 2008, everything was virtualization. Everyone hoped it would open every single wallet because it's a super cost saving, blah, blah, blah. People were in my neck of the woods in Eastern Europe, people were terrified of it because they were terrified virtualization will cost them jobs. It's the same story with then 2014 cloud came about. It was supposed to be the same keyword. Cloud is to optimize and everything, and again Eastern Europe and Central Europe, we are not doing that stuff because it will cost me my job. It's a real sentiment. And also in cloud, someone can look on the backend to my email, and in the last year or two, maybe closer to two, it was zero trust, zero trust, zero trust, zero trust, right? And for someone that has been around for a little while, it seems like another marketing spiel to spin something that has been around for a while. So if you can start cutting through that kind of BS, that would be great.
Yeah. So zero trust is honestly, it's one of those things that the Gartner hype curve kind of represents that dynamic we were just talking about really well. It's definitely got that visibility, but the good news is there's some awesome substance behind it. And the thing that confuses most people, even those that are trying to explain it to others, is that there's two different layers or two different aspects of it. And part of that is because security took a tactic, a security perimeter. They lifted that right out of the military manual, right? As a military doctrine, that's one of the things you do. But military also has terrain and 1,000 other things in their doctrine, right? There's a whole
Yep.
bunch of different things, OODA loops, you name it. But they lifted this one thing and they said, this is our strategy. It's not a strategy, it's a tactic. And so you ended up having a tactic that was a tactic and a tactic that was a strategy. And so zero trust actually does two things. The first thing is when we realize this perimeter thing isn't going to protect us in the cloud mobile world, right? Because, hey, the stuff is outside of my network and I don't
Yep.
have visibility. I can't respond to incidents. I can't protect it. I can't do access control. Like there's two things that had to happen. The first was oh my gosh, we have to fix access control. Who can get to my cloud and who not to? And I need to do that without a firewall, right? Like, how do I do that? So that's where zero trust access
Yes,
control.
people still want cloud NACs, right? People still want to have a cloud NAC.
Oh yeah, I want
It
to run
blows my
everything through
mind.
my egress. No, no, it kills performance, it kills security, it kills everything.
Yeah, I love the comparison with tactic versus strategy. Someone told me way back when that cloud computing did to security what artillery fire did to castle fortifications.
Yeah, it's the Maginot Line all over again,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
again,
it's you
history
built a
now,
wall
history
because
buffs.
we're planning for the last war, right? I mean, it's the exact same thing. But and there's still that stuff happens. If you don't put up a firewall, you're going to get aced in like no time, right? Like
Oh,
that
for
happens.
sure.
But that's one component. It's necessary but not sufficient, and that's the big thing. And so the first thing you have to do is like tactically, you need an access control strategy that works regardless of network location. That's like the first thing, period, right? And like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh, I don't even know who has what stuff I have and who has access to it in the cloud, on mobile devices, everywhere. Like that's the number one thing you have to figure out.
yeah.
Prevention.
So sometimes people try. I've seen again. I would love for you to comment. So sometimes I've seen people go overboard and say zero trust means you probably should throw away your network perimeter. Just do not do it. Burn the MFR down.
Totally.
And because
These
people go
apps
from
were
0 to
built
60.
for a safe network. You do your best to preserve that while you
I
acknowledge
know,
reality and move beyond
right?
it.
It's the same thing, right? It's just throw the baby out with the proverbial bathwater because there is a new and shiny thing.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. It's like, yes, we need to get out of the mindset that that's the only thing we have to do. We have to break the mindset. But are we going to throw out the firewalls? Maybe if we get better controls in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years, but we're not ready for that yet.
There is
It's a
a reason
transition.
SASE is just still an emerging market, right?
Say again?
There is a reason why SASE, like cloud proxies and secure access edge,
Hmm.
it's still an emerging market because no one has figured out how to do it well end to end.
Yeah, there's some decent technology out there that's starting to come together, but there's no turnkey, ready to go solution that I've seen anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good idea. And SASE is going to take you to the exact same place that Zero Trust does, which is kind of the second part of it. So the first thing is your access control, right?
Yes, sir.
But then the same dynamics of this perimeter thing isn't working for us because we also attach all of our detections to firewall, IDS, IPS on the edge. Like all of our detect, respond, recover was also dependent on it. And so like that same exact dynamic is also blowing up security operations or the SOC. And like all of those assumptions aren't working anymore. You now have to learn about identity and data and applications and be able to do detection of anomalies there and then respond and clean stuff. You can't just do it at the network firewall and endpoint as well. And so the other thing that Zero Trust does is it's got that first access control thing, but it's got this overarching strategy. Like, hey, we have to have new assumptions, and this is where our principles come from: assume breach, explicitly verify, and least privilege. I remembered all three. And so that's the thing that goes over it, and it's going to transform your access control, which is that first oh my gosh moment. SecOps, your security operations next, and your data centers are also going to take a pass on it. But you know what? There's a lot of legacy apps in there, so it's going to take a while to modernize them, get them to use identity controls and all this other cool stuff. So you're going to have to keep the old controls in place and protect your back end until you can modernize it, using whatever you got. And then you also have this like ancient OT and IoT stuff, right? Well, the IoT is new, but you have like ancient OT stuff that's like, hey, we modernized this with brand new electronics in the 70s, right? And it's, oh yeah, by the way, it controls a physical machine that runs Steam, and it's in Steam powered devices, right? And that it's like you can't do OIDC and OAuth and SAML on that. You've got to apply the principles to that. So
Yeah.
there's sort of like this transformation of everything and the way you think about it in this sort of assume compromise, assume breach thing. But then you have the different components. So that's the thing that throws most people off, is they don't realize this is the great modernization of security that's overdue, that everybody's going to be complaining about 16 different ways. But it starts with access control, because holy crap, we're going to the cloud.
It's already happened, right? There is a reason why shadow IT happens, right? Because throughout years, those controls became so freaking burdensome that millennials like myself, they say, F it, I'm just using WhatsApp for work.
Exactly. But are they going to fire the CISO because there was a data breach on a system he wasn't aware of? Maybe. right? So like security's job is still there, right? Like your job, a better way to say it is it his or her job as the CISO to protect this wherever it is? Yes, because it's a corporate asset. And so, the fact that the organization is dysfunctional doesn't mean you don't have to secure it. And so that's part of the zero trust like strategic piece in my mind is how do we help the security org and the business folks to learn each other's language enough to talk to each other and support each other's
Yeah.
goals so that we're not sitting here saying business made a decision, but there was a security failure. We accepted that risk, so we're going to fire the security guy who did not make that decision or gal, right? Like that's part of that transformation, in my opinion, is fixing those kind of things and looking at security as the integral security component of your digital strategy. Like you're going digital, great. Let's make sure it's secure, right? Right?
Yeah. And
Like how
so,
do we make
how
sure
do
that's
you
part
get
of it?
out of the analysis paralysis? Because it seems overwhelming, right? It's
Yeah.
so different from the things that even Microsoft has been training you for the past 2 decades with wonderfulness of GPOs and LDAP binds. It's so much different. It's so different that it's overwhelming, and if you try getting into the topic, it's like drinking from the fire hose. How
Yeah.
do you get out of that analysis paralysis mode in your experience?
The biggest thing is to understand the what how divide, right? Because like technologists have this
What and how?
problem of you ask them what do you do for a living, they'll explain how they do their job. No. What do you do? And that's because we're just overwhelmed with the details of the day to day. Everybody does, but technology people have it stronger than others.
Yes.
But the truth is, like, we have to realize that security's job isn't changing. What they do, the outcome, keeping stuff protected from bad guys messing with it, that doesn't change at all. How you do it, which technology, which approach, what kind of detection, what kind of processes you have, whether or not you talk to different people, which you should be talking more, that is what changes. The how of the job changes, but the what, we still need someone to detect and respond to incidents. We still need someone to prevent it. We still need someone to report compliance. We actually have a new job now, which is kind of cool, which is posture management. We have real-time data. We know what
Yeah.
the actual security looks like in real time. Does someone in your organization have that job? Probably not, based on what we've seen. But someone needs it, like, because we can do this now. So that's like the one what change. Everything else is that's great that you're a SOC analyst. Are you going to do it with firewall logs? No, you're going to do it with the data that's available, which is probably an identity-based access thing that's application context aware, so you know what the heck the users want. This is the
Yeah.
stuff you could never figure out when you're looking at the firewall logs, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like, I have a packet. Who initiated that from what system and why? You can't answer that from network data. So it's actually making the jobs better, but you have to learn new skills to be able to appreciate it. So that's sort of the thing that I've seen is really, just winning hearts and minds that, hey, your job isn't changing, your job is secure. You just have to do it differently. And oh, by the way, the tools are a lot better. And
Yeah, tools
that's the thing is
are a
like
lot better
seeing it and
because
believing it.
yeah, in the market, especially in your cybersecurity field, there is a gigantic need for more hands, more people to do the
Yes.
work, right? That's why. So when I talk again, I do pre-sales and compete on my daily basis, right? So when I talk to customers and they say we have like $3 million to spend, in me as a person, my best advice I can give them is use that money to staff up, get more people hands on, because you probably already have good enough tools. Probably, right?
It depends. It's kind of a mix, right?
Yeah.
It really depends on your organizational situation. And I always hate giving the it depends answer, just so you know. But the thing is, as usually the tools that are built into the platform are pretty darn good, right? At least on the Microsoft side. I mean, there's some gaps on on ours, but a lot more gaps on different clouds and whatnot. But like the thing that's really really important that we found is the automation technology, right? And whether automation shows up as ML that does a bunch of analytics to find the anomalies for you, whether automation is like an orchestration, like as part of a SOAR, like Sentinel's got their thing that, pops something in the Slack channel, does this, closes a firewall port or blocks an IP at the firewall or whatever. Like that automation to take that daily pain, that toil off of the backs of people, that is huge. Like, so normally I would say use the tools you got. especially if it's built in, because it's going to be built in, it's going to be maintained as part of the cloud, et cetera. Like, I love that dynamic. So you don't have to install a new tool every 2 to 3 years or whatever. But like, automation is well worth the look at the technology, because there's nothing that causes burnout faster in a SOC than having to chase a whole bunch of one, false positives, right? But two, having to do the same manual task 16 times, right, for every incident.
Yeah, the swivel chairing is literally the worst. From my admin background, me having be on a one screen, copy pasting into and swivel chair to another screen to do the thing, it's mind-numbingly boring. It's a fun thing to do as your entry job to understand how the systems work. But one of my old mentors used to say, if it moves, script it, right?
I love it.
If it moves, script it. Just at the end of the day, if you have to do something 3 times, just figure out how to script it, how to automate it. If you don't know, because most of the time, while you're trying to figure out how to script it or automate it, there is already something in the product or the things that you already have that you can kind of stitch together, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more standardized, the less barrier of entry the automation, quote unquote, method is, the better, because the worst thing that can happen to me as an employee is to be irreplaceable, because I don't want to pick up my phone when I'm on vacation. I never want to be irreplaceable.
Dude, my philosophy is work myself out of any job I'm in. I want to figure it out, pave the road, and then get out of there.
Yeah.
And the thing is like, we don't always look at it that way, especially in security, because people are like afraid for their jobs and all that, which is, it doesn't, that's not the right way to think about it.
It's strange.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, when you think about it, like, the automation is so important in security operations. The challenge that we face is, like, there's some stuff that we do all the time, and we want to automate that out, because we don't want to fully automate. We'll never have an automated SOC because our problem is not well defined. Our problem is a smart human that comes up with a new attack if the old ones don't work.
Yep.
Right. And so we want those human minds not on the same stuff that we've been doing forever. We want them on the new stuff. We want that. Hey, we want the human mind on the new things, figuring it out. We don't want them doing a bunch of manual repetitive stuff.
It's always detect, remediate, mitigate, right? Because that detection part of new stuff is mostly done with the human supervision. Then remediation and mitigation can be automated when you figure out patterns of detection.
Yeah, I want the humans getting a really well crafted, high quality alert that's an actual attacker, and bringing their creativity and ingenuity to that. I want them proactively hunting to see what slipped through the cracks, what made it through. I don't want them doing the same garbage every day. That's a waste of a human mind.
Yes, it is. And honestly, once you have that kind of iterative process, it's something that my director of cybersecurity says, Alex Weiner, that when you're being chased by the pack of wolves, it's not about outrunning the wolves, it's about outrunning the slowest guy. So when you're basically trying to not to be the slowest guy, is just you can do a lot with fundamentals, right? So when you see this unsurmountable wall of zero trust and you are figuring out what to start, there are things that you can do fundamentally that can basically get you ahead. We still have that dumb stat that less than 20% global admins in Office 365 have MFA on them. Less than 20%.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of speaks to the power of defaults, because we learned that, I guess, a little bit too late in the cycle. And a lot of people already had their Office 365 set up. The default now pretty much does the right thing.
Yes.
But, we can't obviously force people to go back on something they've already set up and break their
Eventually
access.
we will. We're working, because it's a compliance thing, right? We, as a cloud operator with a shared responsibility model, we literally cannot change configuration on a customer. We literally cannot, unless we give them proper notice, opt-out model, go through a legal compliance review, and so on and so forth. Eventually, the MFA for admins, it's going to happen.
Yeah, and you touched on a very important point earlier, which is, zero trust isn't about buying all the new tools, right? Zero trust is applying those principles and that mindset to what you've got. Again, things like automation, there's some outsized, yes, the ROI is amazing if you go for it.
Yes.
But the reality is it's a different mindset, a different philosophy. And most people have Azure AD. Most people have access to conditional access and some of these foundational components. And it's just a matter of using it and applying it and doing the MFA. And there's also a lot of hygiene elements to it.
Yep.
Like, hey, patch the stuff that's exposed first, right? The things that are going to actually get internet traffic and website browsing and all that at the endpoints and the web servers and whatnot. Like, if you're doing, a lot of those things that you've got, just focusing on that instead of trying to defend and make your network security perfect. Like that's a big part of it, is really just thinking about it differently and having that, assume breach, assume compromise. I think of it as actually assume failure nowadays. Like,
so you said something pretty interesting that basically jogged my memory. What's your idea between security perfect and good enough security?
The way I think about that is it's sort of the term I like to use is cost of attack, and it's really friction of attack.
Yeah.
So your job as a defender is not to get to perfect security. Your job is to make it as hard as possible for the adversary to do what they want. So there's technically a million things that are possible that people can use to abuse a complex technical system. There's an infinite possibilities, right? But what your job is to understand your attacker well enough. What's the ransomware gangs, what any nation states that might be targeting you, what the commodity malware. Understand that well enough, and what is cheap and easy for them to do to succeed, and take that off the plate. Take all of the stuff that's proven that's there, drop it off the plate, and then they have to invest or buy something new or do research to do it. That's your ideal state, is you're forcing them to spend money, spend time, spend human minds to figure out something new. You want to take all the garbage off the plate, because even the most advanced attackers, they're going to use a cheap, easy thing if it works, right?
Yeah.
And so that's your job, is to drive their cost up and drive their friction up by taking that off there without blowing your own budget.
So I put something on the screen. I freaking love it. I couldn't help myself, because at the end of the day, I have a variant of that discussion with customers that, okay, do you care about someone liquid nitrogen freezing your TPM chips and getting access to your data, or Eastern European guy like myself grabbing you into a non-descriptive gray van, driving you out to one of the beautiful Pacific Northwest forest and getting a crowbar to your kneecap?
Yeah.
The thing is, coercion is a valid compromise method, right? In Microsoft, we literally have a company policy that says, if you're under coercion, give up everything.
Yeah, we don't want people dying.
I was held at gunpoint basically in one of the ex-Soviet things on my Microsoft job. I went as a PFE. I was kept on security check. I had to pull out $1,000 from my corporate card and pay a ransom, essentially. That was a very, very fun expense report to file.
Wow.
But that's the thing. It's all about risk matrix, right? There is a reason why executives of big oil companies have private security companies.
Yeah.
And it's you're thinking about vulnerability list, right? What is your what is the likelihood of something happening? What are your mitigating controls, and what's the impact if it realizes itself?
Exactly.
What if someone has a password for your global admin? How effed are you?
It's a bad day.
I'm putting my @microsoft.com username and password in customer meetings on whiteboards all over the place. I don't care.
Okay.
Right? I put it on Twitter way back when, and nothing happened in our Microsoft tenant. Now I couldn't retrieve that password because I don't have it, right? So you as a customer, you as a security professional, are you ballsy enough to tweet your own username and password? If you aren't, you still have a way to go, probably.
Okay, that's one way to go passwordless, is a forcing function.
Yeah, it's a thought experiment,
I wouldn't recommend that for most organizations.
I know, it's a thought experiment, right?
Yeah.
It's another thought experiment. I tell you, prove to me that I didn't dial into your VPN 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, the way that I describe that dynamic is, is the only thing that is standing between an attacker controlling all of your business systems a password? Is that it? Is that your entire barrier? And that's sort of the case for MFA and passwordless, and getting to that strong that piece of it is kind of how I think about it. But kind of riffing off the ransom piece, I wanted to make sure that the audience, um, kind of gets my standard dire warning on this. We've been dealing with security in many ways as like a paper exercise for a very long time, right? The auditor was the main enemy, et cetera. And then, about 10 years ago, 2008, 2010-ish timeframe, some of the better tools like, what was it? The Pass the Hash toolkit became Windows Credential Editor, and then Mimikatz
Yeah,
kind of took off
Mimikatz,
a
yeah.
few years later. With the mass weaponization of things and all of the groups that were enabled by those techniques and other similar tools as well, we started to move from paper tigers to live fire exercises, right? And then in the past couple of years, we've started to see the next level of it, because most of the time that was kind of done for data theft, right? In data theft, you got to find someone to buy it. You got to find a use for the data. You've got to find the data itself. It's hard to monetize as an attacker, right? But the thing that we've seen is the rise of ransomware. I mean, technically started with CryptoLocker in 2013, which kind of pioneered the whole idea of encrypt your disk and make me pay money, pay the ransom to get out of it. But we've actually seen this grow and explode in the last 2 to 3 years, maybe 4 years now, as they started taking those APT techniques, the credential theft, pass the hash, pass the ticket, et cetera, and they're using them with the ransom monetization model, right?
Yeah.
Like, pay me or you don't get access to your, not just a local machine anymore, your entire network, your entire environment, all of your systems. And it's been pretty devastating. We've seen it hit the news in a bunch of places, and there's some that didn't hit the news, right?
Yes.
And it's ugly. I mean, this is essentially the worst case scenario, because the attackers have found there's a new way to force people to make money, or there's a new way to make money by forcing people to pay.
Oh, it's a very lucrative business, and it's tough to get those, because you basically get paid in Bitcoin, and then you just dissolve into a blockchain.
Oh, it's bad, because when you look at the numbers, and this is just the public stuff, not the payments that nobody ever noticed, right? You're starting to rival probably a large number of nation state attack budgets at just the stuff we know about publicly, let alone the stuff behind the scenes. So this is something that is highly profitable, even if they want to lay low for a bit, to kind of stay out of the headlines for a little bit. This model is horrible. I mean, this is going to make things really bad for the years to come, because it's sort of that worst case scenario come true. And it's something that we have some guidance out there, AKMS/ransomware, to help people through that. It really follows Zero Trust, but with a heavy focus on backup and restore first, because the number one thing you want to make sure is that you're recovering with your own tools, not with the attacker's tools in their key, right?
Yeah.
Because none of those are good. They cost a lot of money, and their tools aren't that great.
Yeah, there are very few, and people that do not give in to ransom are fewer and further between, more and more. The Maersk case study is an exception, not the rule, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, they recovered well, which is good. But the thing I have to give them credit for is they're very open and sharing with the industry and with everyone, all the way up to the CEO, if I recall correctly. So I have huge props for Maersk. We've actually worked with them after the incident. I've done a couple of visits.
My team, our team helped on the AD stuff, right? So it was a team effort.
When they rebuilt all their machines, they rebuilt them to brand new. Let's leave the legacy behind. And so they made a lot of good decisions in all aspects. So I think they handled their incident extraordinarily well by any standard.
So there was a gigantic human element to that thing, right? Instead of, there was zero pointing fingers, literally zero, right? It wasn't who effed up that we are in that kind of a situation. It was basically no one even had that kind of a thought. It was, hey, we are in this together. Let's make people that are working on the ground trying to restore and recover. Let's put them in the walled garden. No one disturb them. Let's protect them. Let's be their shit umbrellas. Pardon my French. It's an amazing story. But any other company that basically it's an instinct to look for the guilty, right?
Yeah, and that blows everything up. Like you poison the water hole when you set up a culture like that. And that's why, some of the Zero Trust guidance at the top end that we put out is heavily focused on the top to bottom. Like, at that business leader level,
Yeah.
what cultural elements? I'm actually writing a zero trust book on the side, and that's like one of the things we're aiming an entire section at. That, folks, listen, y'all need to anchor in. Y'all need to work together. Security is a normal part of business. They're not used to it. You promoted the head geek, right? Great.
Yes.
Okay. Now you got to educate the head geek, because they obviously had some instinct for business. You got to make sure they understand your initiatives, and you got to work with them and coach them and learn
Yes.
from them. So it's this two-way thing that you've got to make security a normal part of business, business a normal part of security. Just like, Maersk shows a great example of how to do that, albeit in a crisis. But like, this is what you need to do. That's part of the zero trust thing, is bringing it all together. It's not just some technology thing, some architecture thing. It's got to be looked at top to bottom, end to
Yeah,
end.
you start with why and then you go into how, right? The how will be enable MFA on everything internet facing. Internally, mitigate past the hash as much as humanly possible. Make sure your admins cannot log in into workstations that are more likely to be compromised, so they cannot be past the hashed.
Yep.
When you have your workstations, join them to Azure, not to on-prem AD, because there is no pass the hash in Azure AD join.
Yep.
It's literally impossible. And you're just looking at mitigations to make stuff harder, but making stuff impossible, it's downright impossible.
No, you're looking for the cheapest thing on their menu, and you're
Yep.
taking that off. And then you
Yep.
find the next cheapest thing, and you're doing that at your lowest cost, your lowest effort level. So you're basically driving them to more and more expensive techniques.
Yep.
And pretty soon, at some point, it becomes either one, not worth it if I'm in it for the money, or two, if I'm a nation state and I'm going to go after you no matter what, I'm going to give you a victory a year, and I'm going to make you earn it, instead
Yep.
of anytime you want, anytime during any month,
Yep.
right? Like, you've got to keep burning that down and cut out their cheap, easy stuff at the bottom. That's the way to think about it, is just burning down their cheap menu. Like, get
Yep.
rid of the 99-cent discount section.
Yes. So do not make sure your front door doesn't open with a bobby pin. You need a crowbar to get in.
Yeah, and look at the whole thing,
Yeah.
because the cheapest thing may not be the thing that you're used to, comfortable with, or whatever. But if you've seen, hey, attackers are doing this, I have to learn that, and I have to learn how to mitigate that,
Yeah.
right?
But it's really easy to get distracted about the newest, funnest vulnerability, right? It's just this week is the Razer thing, right? The
Yeah,
mouse driver.
to me, malware is the cyber equivalent, and I don't like using the war and violence analogies too much, but it's the cyber equivalent of bullets, right? Like, malware is just malware, right?
Yep.
Vulnerabilities, there's going to be a flow of them at all times. You're just always going to have vulns. You're always going to have malware. You need to manage those at scale and at speed. Like, it's not about an individual thing. Yeah, there's mistakes were made. Mistakes are always made. Every software is complicated, right?
Of course.
Even if you're trying to do security right, people still mess up. So you've
Yeah.
just got to plan for, you're going to have a steady stream of malware, you're going to have a steady stream of vulns. And how do I get good at managing those over time and make my business processes make it easy, so that I'm not having a fight with the VP of production every time I want to patch something?
Oh my goodness. I'm having flashbacks. I'm sorry. It's
All
just
good.
fighting over patching. Zero maintenance Windows in 3 years. It's a reality in most of manufacturing here in the
Yeah.
US. It blows my freaking mind. It's just a house of cards at this point. Uh, I'm terrified as well. It's going to get bad before it gets worse, before it gets better, probably.
Yeah. But we can do the right thing.
Yeah.
You just keep doing the right thing every day, and you make progress every day, and you're better off than if you didn't. And that's the thing, is we've got to set realistic expectations, have a clear end state, which zero trust helps provide, and then march it. Ignore
Yeah.
the noise, ignore the, oh my gosh, my one product of zero trust solves everything. You got to ignore that kind of stuff, because
Yeah.
marketers market just like malware writers write, right? Like, you've got to make sure that you're just steadily eating away at the problem.
Yep.
And that's the journey we're on. That's the world we live in. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't have wished it on us. We had the good side of the internet for so many years, and it was awesome. And then the bad side is now catching up, and we're like, yeah, the internet's still pretty cool, but it has
Is
downsides
it?
too. And so we've got to deal with the balance.
Is it? Yeah, it's just kind of tough. Sitting on cybersecurity Twitter it's a very toxic place. right?
Yeah, I'm
Getting
very careful
distracted
about
about
who
the
I
newest and
follow because I
greatest,
don't
about
want to.
corner cases. I personally blame Black Hat for like at least half of it, because all of those Black Hat sessions are awesome. They are showing specific exploits, 0 day, and we get over focused about that and forgetting about, hey, let's burn through the cheap stuff first before we go and do the
Yeah, and you need to do something about those. Like, hey, they found a new vuln, great, we'll patch it.
patch
Or
it.
it's a new thing, you need to okay, we'll add that in there. But we still also have to do, Windows
Yeah.
patches, iOS things. I mean,
Yeah, is
we
the
have to do all that kind of
puppy
stuff.
running
Linux
around and
patches.
he's saying, "Ooh, shiny! Ooh, shiny! Ooh, shiny!"
Oh yeah, and yeah, I thought yeah. If there's a couple of fun little things, like if you think IT hygiene is bad, check out OT sometime. And like if you think it's hard to patch Windows and keep it up to date, check out Linux sometime. Like there's always like something that's worse, which is why you got to get really good at this stuff and really look at it agnostically, right? A vuln is a vuln across any platform. I mean, and you got to, apply the principles as appropriate to each one.
It's not
So
as easy as doing apt-get update, apt-get upgrade on Linux.
I haven't actually used Linux in many years, so I don't even know if I
Yeah,
assume it's still there because nothing
it's
dies in Linux.
apt is still there. It's still there. It's still the part. It's going to be part of Windows 11 from day zero. So it will be wget and apt-get, apt
Okay.
get.
I remember when apt-get was a new thing. Like I remember that was like the new cool thing back in whatever it was, oh 03, oh 04,
Yeah,
oh 05, or
apt was
something like
fun.
that. I was like, oh, Debian figured out something cool.
Yeah. So yeah, you can do a lot of with fundamentals. Let's not get crazy. That's what I'm getting from you, at least,
Yeah. And the
because
one thing
getting
I would
crazy.
want to definitely point the audience at is we've got this rapid modernization program for Zero Trust that really kind of brings it into focus and says, okay, what are these four main initiatives that I should be driving around user access control, security operations, management and maintenance? What's the third one? The OT and IoT, kind of thing. If you've got it, secure it, right? Apply the principles to those environments as you can within constraints. And then data center. So as you're doing your data center and app space, attach security to the migration to Azure or wherever cloud you're doing. Attach it to the DevOps process and the new development. Last thing you want to do is ship new technology. That's actually the zero trust. Excuse me. That's the privilege access one.
That's the privileged identity one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll get to the zero trust one. That's like a very focused part of the user access piece. That's
Yeah.
what we turned it
On
up
Azure
to.
AD one, we have the implementation guide, how to go step by step, right? How to go with how. I assume rapid modernization plan is more of on the Y side than how side.
Yeah, let me see if I can share my screen really quick without messing something up.
Stop
And
sharing
so this
mine.
is actually part of our cyber reference architecture.
Oh,
And so we created this
Ra.
4-stage rapid modernization plan. So it's the AKMS/MCRA. And let's see here, bringing this up real quick. And this will be my first time sharing, and we're doing it live, so that makes it all the more fun.
It will.
Share.
Your browser will ask you to share thing.
I can share screen itself, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, learning every day.
Yeah, streaming is so much easier these days.
Yes, a lot of things have become standard. Did I get the right screen?
Let me just add it to the production dashboard. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, so this is part of our cyber reference architecture. So it's the shortcut for those that are wanting to browse there. You can download this AKMS/MCRA here. So this has got all of our complicated diagrams and all that kind of good stuff all in one place. And then one of them is the Zero Trust Rapid Modernization Plan, somewhere in here. There it is. And so the way we think about it is like these four parts, right? So user access productivity, right? This you can break up and do the first part first and the second part later. But this is where you get your strong user, strong device assurances. This is where that explicitly verify kicks in fierce, right? And then you want to progress it. You don't have to necessarily do it next, but you want to progress it into the apps and data piece and really kind of refine that and make sure you're applying it to all of your apps, your on-prem stuff, publishing it, et cetera. So you get that strong device and user assurance.
Yep.
Second major initiative is the modernizing security operations. So getting to the point where you can really get good at those basic block, punch, and kick kind of thing that are coming in all the time. And you're dropping your mean time to remediate, the time that the attacker has access, as short as possible. Next one, if you've got OT and IoT, make sure you're securing it. There's a lot of constraints in the OT environment, like I said, but really want to get that there. And then the data center DevOps. So, big time is, this tends to be actually, ironically, the lower priority, because most organizations have a decent data center sort of perimeter-based approach that can, you can deal with it for now while you deal with these other more burning problems. But once you get around to this, or you get around to migrating to the cloud, really, really helpful to attach security to that migration and do as much as you can to land them in a nice secure landing zone, like the enterprise scale landing zone in CAF. As you start developing new applications, bring security in, make it DevSecOps instead of just DevOps. So, this one's, that last part is really an attach, so that as you're touching these things, as you have people interested in paying attention and learning about this particular app or workload, that you're adding the security natively to it. So that's how we kind of think about it to drive that incremental progress. But that's to help people get started on the Zero Trust and kind of bring it all together.
Yeah, and then you look at your vulnerabilities and you just
that's part
punt
of
them, keeping those in mind.
Fix your stuff. Which is a lot easier with cloud tools now, actually, with Azure Security Center and the like.
It's a lot easier for the biggest and baddest customers we are working with, they have like forests with 20 domains, 720 domain controllers, and herding those proverbial cats is tough, right? Everyone is terrified of shutting that server down that LDAP binds over the IP address.
Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not some magical silver bullet solution, but you got to walk the path every day, and pretty soon you'll get to the Emerald City. But you got to get on the yellow brick road to do it.
So we have had a couple of few big competitors like Jump Cloud and Okta basically saying burn on premises down and hashtag rethink AD. In your opinion, again, it's an opinion based, right? Have an opinion, don't hesitate to use it. How realistic those marketing spiels are? Because I have mine, but I'm curious about yours.
So I always have respect for anyone that's helping solve our customer problems. So under that framework, and I don't think it's realistic to assume you can just burn down all that sort of process and intellectual property. Now, some of it, do you want to leave it behind? Absolutely. Can you just blindly burn it down? Absolutely not. So the truth is somewhere in the middle, and that's why I really like Microsoft's approach. Even just stepping out of my role, which I do it for my open group work, and I'm the Zero Trust Architecture Forum co-chair over there. But so even stepping out of my Microsoft role, not even being an advocate, the thing I like about the Microsoft piece is it is pushing people towards the cloud, towards the modern, without having this blind, I only sell cloud stuff, so therefore that's all I need, right? I really like that Microsoft is trying to solve the whole problem and pushing in the right direction, but not requiring people to do damaging things in order to get to the promised land and lose half the family, right? That's one of the things I do like.
It's Oregon Trail, man.
Yeah, we don't want everyone to get dysentery and die, right? We want to bring the whole family across. And so, we know that there's going to be certain things that are going to be painful. We know there's difficult trade-offs to make. We get that. But, ultimately, we want to be pushing as hard and fast to the cloud as we can without breaking the system, right? There's more benefit than disadvantage to making that move. And
it's cost benefit, right? What's your cost for your benefit? It's a cost benefit analysis at the end of the day.
Yeah, and from a Pareto perspective, if you look at it, like a 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 year time frame, somewhere in there, 80% of the time the cloud is going to be better, and you're going to be able to get there quickly. There's always a few holdbacks. I think we've got 4 or 8% of our stuff at Microsoft that's still on-prem, and there's a good reason for it to either temporarily or permanently be on-prem. We have to have an offline root of trust for the cloud itself. I mean, there's certain things we have to do, right? So from that perspective, most of it can go to the cloud and be there, but there is time needed to do it right. You can't just blindly burn it down. So that's where I think if you're in a point solution vendor sort of perspective, you end up having a biased and warped view of reality, unfortunately, that isn't a great source of advice for customers dealing with the real world. Now, does that mean I think Microsoft's right about everything and that we have the best everywhere and no?
Not even close.
But I think we're doing a lot of the right things in a lot of the right directions and much more thoughtful and aligned to our customers' actual needs.
It's more holistic, right? The thing that came to my mind when I was trying to read and look through those zero trust rethink AD quote unquote solutions was, it's freaking hubris. It's just, if you think that you can solve everything by, I understand Active Directory being so prevalent, it introduces an attack surface with ransomware. We totally get it, right? It's a 20-odd something year technology that has been invented before the time when everything was internet connected, trying to stitch it together in such a way that it might seem appealing just to burn the MFR down.
Yep. I mean, honestly, I'd love to, but I realize that customers have way too much invested in it. And yeah, you can mask the problem and pretend that it's not there, but the problem's still there, right? And so that's the thing is I like, and I like the way that we're building it from the Microsoft standpoint is we're trying to get people off of it and provide a reasonable bridge to do so. You can mask over it and have everybody not think it's there, but then security comes on security always brings the truth, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yep. And so that's the thing is we actually need to solve the problem, not just mask over it and make a revenue goal for this quarter, this year. And that's the thing that it's really important to look at it from that perspective. And I mean, there's things I wish we did faster at Microsoft, right? I think there's things that we were prioritizing differently. I mean, the thing that, looking back, it's easy in hindsight. 20 years ago, AD was way too complex, right? And yes, I agree with that. But the reality is what our customers were demanding was complexity and power, because at the time, when you look at the late 90s, the market thought that's what they needed to be enterprise grade. That was the perception.
Yes.
And they would not have bought it unless we provided that, right?
Yeah.
And so then
complexity and customizability comes with a very high operational excellence cost.
Yeah. And that's a lesson we learned during that period. Everybody did, because everybody wanted to have this, but like, hey, doing an individual ACL on an individual attribute of an individual object in the Active Directory, maybe we didn't need that, right?
So
it was there.
But it's the same story with list object mode, right? You probably remember just hiding attributes.
Debate with NetWare, yes.
So list object mode is coming to Azure. You will be able to hide subsets of your directory and stuff like that. So Rocketman is saying in the chat that basically he's transitioning his applications from Active Directory dependency to have Azure AD dependency, but that's just one of the pillars, right? Because you have basically 3 or 4 big pillars. You have applications, users, devices, and infrastructure. All of those can have dependency on a specific store of identities and security, right? You can, if you burn Active Directory down, all 4 of them go into scream test mode. I love scream testing. Shut it down and see who screams, right?
We actually have a method that we use during our cloud migration at Microsoft for doing scream testing. And it was a very rational, nice staged approach. And I'm like, guys, we need to put that out in the docs site. Like, we need to get that published, because like, people need to do that, and they need to have the confidence on this is how you do it in a way that doesn't actually blow up your business.
Yes, and so you have a backout process when and if someone screams. It's more of an if than when. Then you have a backout process to go. So some of the classic ones, right? What is that group used for? Instead of deleting and purging the group, convert it into a distribution list from a security group. If something goes belly up, you just convert it back.
Yeah, and like the other one is like, that I really liked about the internal approach that we used was like, they did things like the first thing they would do would be put like a logon banner on the thing, right? They would do that for like a period of time. Then they made it progressively more annoying for someone that owned a server or workload. And then there was a certain point at which, okay, we're going to try shutting it off for like an hour and see if anyone notices, right? And then bringing it back online. And so they had a really nice progression for that, because it's a tough universal problem that everybody faces.
Yeah. So we're coming to an end, Mark. I really appreciate you cutting through all the zero trust BS, because again, we've been seeing anyone starting from a machine learning vendor and finishing with like a phone vendor. They said we are zero trust compatible. because why not, right? I'm selling you an IP phone, which is zero trust. So I know it might seem overwhelming. There are some things that people can do. Cybersecurity reference architecture that I linked in the chat can help. We will put it also in a VOD in the description. But yeah, Mark Simos, cybersecurity extraordinaire. That's your forever title in our heart of hearts.
Awesome.
I really appreciate you coming along onto this chat. So
yeah, this was a fantastic conversation. I had a blast.
yeah.
I hope our audience enjoyed it as much as we did.
So yeah, we had like around 12, 20 people live, but the VOD numbers will come up later. But yeah,
Cool.
Mark, are you on socials? Can people follow you on or stuff like that, or are you
Yes.
trying to be private?
I do LinkedIn and Twitter, right, for professional reasons. I don't do personal social media. It's just never
Okay. I do
occurred to
Twitter
me
as
as being a
well.
good
So
idea.
I will retweet you later from the show thing. So yeah, follow Mark Simos on Twitter. Very cool gentleman. Our opinions do not represent opinions of our employer, by the way.
Sometimes, but not a guarantee.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone, and see you next week. We are doing what's new in Azure Active Directory next week because the release notes for August are going to come out sometime this week. So we'll see what changed and what did we have to roll back. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.